Powered by Rev Media in partnership with TSN, it is Season 5, Episode 35 of the Rand Dregs Hockey Podcast, and it is presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, who have introduced the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series, CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask, all of the hallmarks of classic Canadian Club, with the added richness and sweetness of sherry. So we're recording Episode 35 here on Tuesday, as we always do. We try and hit the mark on Tuesday and Thursday with Rand Dregs, and relatively quiet weekend here in Brooklyn, Ontario, other than Ray, and you'll appreciate this as a pet owner. Son Mason is in the early stages of moving back home from Guelph, right? I mean, there could, job related, there's lots of reasons why he's considering this. The problem is he has a cat.
Out. Sorry, son. Love you. Out.
Well, the cat was dropped off on Friday here, so the cat is living in the basement, which we have, an in-suite, like a granny suite in our basement, where Mason spends 99% of his time when he's here. So it's not a deep inconvenience, but he's not here in week because he's still working in Guelph. So we're on top of managing the cat. Tiny and the cat don't really want to get to know each other. You know, it's
Sure.
cat dog. You understand that. So if that's not challenging enough, the chaos is elevated by the fact that Mason, his girlfriend Kaylee, also got a puppy. Andy, the Portuguese water dog. Now, the good news in this is Andy, who's just a few months old, I think, actually lives at Kaylee's parents' house, which isn't that far away. However, they're co-parenting this animal, and now Andy and Fluffer the cat are trying to...
Hang on. Wait a minute. Back up. What's the cat's name?
Fluffer.
Do we really need to go here?
I have no idea.
What is he doing?
Well, hold on.
Hey, Fluffer, why don't you come over here and have a seat? Come on.
Well, it kind of goes from Fluffer to Fluffy, but the cat has been around our family for quite some time. He just more or less took ownership of the cat, and the cat's original name was Minnie, which was also kind of weird.
Not like Fluffer.
No, he didn't like Minnie, so he
Who didn't? The cat or Mason?
Well, so he took this cat to Guelph, where he lives with three. It's kind of a good story. The four guys live in this house in Guelph. They all played hockey, minor hockey together all the way through. Two of them are playing at Guelph University now. Mason is not; he's working. But they all just kind of got a hold of the cat and decided that Fluffer was a better name than Minnie. So now we refer to the cat.
Well, I would say this animal convergence at your house is ripe for a disaster.
It's chaos.
Because there's going to be a point here. My brother pulled this stunt in 1980, whatever. Came home, got a dog. Came back from school, got a dog. So he's living at home with mom and dad. Yeah. Moved out, left the dog. Now all of a sudden, mom and dad got a German Shepherd. They need a German Shepherd like a hole in the head. Back then, right? And so, but my brother just left the dog. Like, what are they going to do? So, of course, they're looking after it. You're going to get left a cat, a dog. Tiny's going to hate them both, and good for Tiny. Tiny should demand his space.
Anyway, I knew as somebody who joins in my thinking of not silence is better, because you're in a busy house, right? There's seldom.
I enjoy silence. Oh, I love it, though.
Nice. just organization is nice. Things where they should be in their place. You appreciate that. So do I.
Yeah. Not in my house. That doesn't happen. I'm only going to add one thing onto your story here. So on December 24th, we're blessed with little Luca.
Yes,
right?
Yes, Luca.
You know who hates Luca? Ollie. Can't stand him.
Jealousy. It happens a lot. Yeah.
So he'll come over. Landon walks over with the baby, and everything's going fine. And then Ollie, all of a sudden, you see him. He stops and he gets his back up and he starts sniffing around.
Yeah.
He goes over. He'll sniff the baby's head, and he's like, "Babies smell great."
Yeah.
Right. And he's like sniffs around, and then he just goes back on his hind legs, and he's like, "Arr."
Yeah.
So Landon's like, oh, for crying out. So we get a bunch of 6-minute visits with Luca
Yeah.
but Ollie's going to have to go. I said, Cam, I'm sorry, he's going to have to go.
Well, obviously there's a getting used to it type of phase in all this, but it has to be jealousy, right? Like
it is, for sure.
It has to be, because Ollie's not used to seeing you or Cammy or Landon, for that matter, paying attention to something that small, something other than Ollie. So,
well, when Cammy picks up Luca, it's on. That's me. I think he's like, yeah, he put that thing down, whatever. But when it's Cammy, he's not buying that.
Well, there you go. Good luck with that. It'll work out in the end. Ollie will come around. He will come around. Yes. All right, so let's check out our Tim Hortons headlines for the start of the week. Brought to you by, of course, Tim Hortons, celebrating 60 years this year. Did you know the first Tim Hortons opened in Hamilton? 1964. And now Tim Hortons, Ray, has over 4,000 restaurants across Canada, 5,700 around the world. I did not know that there were 1,700 Tim Hortons restaurants outside of Canada. I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's a great iconic brand, but that's a big number.
That is a big number. I do enjoy when I wander across a Tim Hortons somewhere in the US. I don't know why I kind of go, oh, Timmy's.
Makes you feel good though, right?
Yeah, it does.
100%. Slice of home, yeah.
And yeah. So wow, that's a big number.
It is a big number. And in celebration, in honor of everything going on at Tim Hortons, you can check out their 4 iconic retro donuts as part of the celebration. They're available now. All right, Corey Perry signs, Ray, with the Edmonton Oilers. No surprise. This had been speculated. Yeah, there was some ongoing kind of peripheral speculation as to whether Corey wanted to sign with the Canadian team to avoid some of the noise, some of the attention, unwanted, I might add, that his family would have to deal with because of what did or didn't go on in Chicago and all that. But he signs, he's on the ice with the Edmonton Oilers. How do you see Corey Perry fitting in there?
I don't see why there is any risk whatsoever for the Oilers with this signing. They don't have a lot of money. They wanted to add size on their fourth line. Like that was going to happen. Even in this winning streak, lots of times they're running out of fourth line. James Hamblin, who really did a nice job for him, Sam Gagner, Derek Ryan, like they're little. And whether people want to accept it or not, when you get into the hard part of the year, the hardest part of the year, the ice does shrink. And if you've got a bunch of big people, it shrinks even more. So you've got a league minimum salary on a guy that doesn't need a whole lot of ice time to be effective anymore. Like he doesn't, he can play 10 minutes for you and he'll be fine.
Yeah.
And as far as walking into the locker room, one of the best parts about adding a veteran at this stage of their career is they all understand what they are and what they're not. Because if they don't, they would have long been gone out of the game by now. Like you just know what you can and can't do anymore. And you can't do what you used to do. Yeah. So now he hasn't won in forever, right? He won as a kid in Anaheim, excuse me, but all these close chances or close misses, and now you got a chance to go in there. You just go in, you do your part. He doesn't say a lot anyway. Like he's not a rambunctious guy. It's funny, we just had Nick Foligno on the other day, and he was amazing. And Luke Richardson had told us the difference between Nick and Corey Perry coming into the Blackhawks locker room was night and day, because Foligno's telling stories about his grandmother and the pasta that he cooked and his kids, and like he's always talking to everybody. And Perry just kind of he does his thing. And so I think it's a really good bet, because here's the thing: if it doesn't work, Dregs, it's at a salary level that they can waive and move on from. So the entire impetus here for success is on Corey Perry. There's no risk to the Oilers on the ice at all for me.
And you know what? I respect Corey's position in his first media availability. You know, Ryan Rishaug asked the question that had to be asked, right? And Corey just said, you know what? I covered all of this. I made my position and my direction, you know, very, very clear in the statement that I issued after everything that went down in Chicago. And I'm just not going to comment on it moving forward. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. People want to dig, they can dig. He's 38 years old. You don't think that he's been fired hard balls and curve balls and everything else by media in the past? You know, move on.
I understand the curiosity. I really
agreed.
do.
Yeah.
You know, and he's got to understand that too. And there is a certain point that the league said it's fine. And even though I guess they did have to say it was fine at some point, but they said it was fine, and all of a sudden he's back and ready to go. So to answer more questions, I don't think he probably needs to do that. Whether, as much as we all have that curiosity bone in us that about anything, you'd like is that like to know a little bit. I don't think he needs to answer anymore.
All right. So the other big news, you know, I guess of the weekend, Ray, would be Patrick was hiring, replacing Lane Lambert, New York Islanders head coach. Not surprised that Patrick was made his way back to an NHL bench because, again, in the world of speculation, every time there's, you know, a potential coaching vacancy, his name would kind of pop up in the background, and you know, never seemed to get any traction. But we know he's a sound hockey guy. But as soon as he hit the ice with the Isles, you could see, you could hear the energy and the passion. So, yeah, it's too bad for Lane Lambert. He's out. But Lou Lamoriello looks at the standing and says, we're past the midpoint here. We're on the outside of the wild card picture, and I got to try and do something to spark this group. And what better way to do that than with a blast from the past and a guy who obviously Lou thinks can lead this team into the postseason.
Oh, okay, so whenever there's a coaching bubble up where people start speculating, hey, there could be a change here or there, and we hear all the time, oh, it's always the same old names. Well, the reason it's the same old names is because most observers don't know who the young names are. Because how would you, unless you were invested in learning about coaches in junior or the American Hockey League? Like you just wouldn't know. So the same names pop up, and Patrick's has always been around the periphery. The two challenges to hiring Patrick were, A, the way it ended in Colorado. Like 2 weeks before training camp, he quit.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just go away. And it's a fight over player personnel with the then general manager, Joe Sakic, who he's a longtime teammate with. And you're like, man, if you can't get along with Joe, like, how's he going to get along with if you're the guy hiring a coach, you're like, can't get along with Joe, who has zero enemies on the planet. Like, how's he going to get along with the next guy? So there's hindrance one. Two is that the last time we see him, you know, like he's still so fiery and emotional. And do you really want that behind your bench? And so time goes on, and he's not been away from the game. He's just been away from the NHL game, right? Like he's been coaching. He's had, so to think that the game's passed him by, in my mind, is an error, because he's been coaching the upswing of the game. As the game has changed, as the game has evolved, he's been in it. So now going into the NHL is kind of just an extension of what he's been doing. I also think you have a general manager who, if you're going in there, you're pretty clear that player personnel decisions are in one door, and it's not a collaboration. Like Lou has done it Lou's way for however many years he's been a manager. Lou's 82, I believe.
Yeah.
He's not hiring a developing coach.
No.
Like it's, hey, I think my team is better than this. I need a spark, and I need a reaction, and I need it like yesterday. And so while I was surprised, because like everything Lou does, Nobody knows anything about it. And then boom, it happens. I was surprised by, oh, geez, Patrick Waugh. But I think I would have been surprised by most any name, unless it would have been Craig Berube. I think I probably would have been surprised by everybody. So I do think it is a shift I know it's a shift in the way that the players are going to hear a message, and it'll be up to them to respond. And I don't know how good they can be, but they're gonna be different for sure.
So we didn't talk about Jacob Chychrun of the Ottawa Senators last week, and his name has been kind of out there loosely in the media for several days now, right? Yeah. And, at least in theory, he joins Noah Hanifin, Chris Tanev, Sean Walker, Nick Seeler on the growing list of potentially available defensemen. Now, the difference of being Chychrun has a year remaining on his contract at $4.6 million with the Sens. So a different set of circumstance here. I know Steve Sthls is listening, but not eager to move him. At least maybe not in season. You have more flexibility in the off season because now you've got 31 teams engaged here. And people are going, geez, he's a good offensive defenseman. Like, why? Well, I mean, is it as simple as looking at that collection of left shot D and seeing Jake Sanderson and Chabot at $8 million and going, well, this guy's going to need a raise. And we have some pretty specific needs. So why not at least listen to the interest when teams are calling? Or does it not make sense to you because you like that player and from an age perspective think he's someone they should hold on to?
Well, to me, it's a decision that has to come down the pike between Chychrun and Chabot. Can't have them both. And the reason you can't have them both is because you got Jake Sanderson at $8 million too. And
yeah,
I mean, like Sanderson is, I'm going to say he's immovable because you don't want to move him. He is he's a corner post, right? On your team. They went and they swung big at these long contracts for young guys are in my mind are so, they're so risky because you're betting on a grand potential that you just never know if it's going to be there. You can have a gut feel and a good feel. And yeah, I hope, man, 8 years is a long time. $8 million is a lot of money. But in any case, they've made that bet with Jake Sanderson. So now you have two defensemen, one making $8 million in Chabot, one at 4.6 in Chychrun. Neither of them defend particularly well. Both of them are offensive-minded defensemen. I don't think you have much hope of moving if you decided to move Chabot at $8 million. I don't think you have much hope of doing that. I think you have a way better chance to move Chychrun if that's what you decide to do. To me, it's an imbalance on their defense that they've got to correct, and sometimes correcting it makes a hard decision. Chychrun's game has long been about offense, and the question is about his defensive game, his awareness in the D zone, and what can you pay him? That 4.6 number, though, makes him super attractive to teams.
No question.
Like, if indeed Chychrun is available, like if that's where Sthls and Poulin get to, I think there'd be a lot of teams that would be pretty interested in him.
Yeah. And I wonder, Ray, if there isn't a sense of freedom from Sthls' chair here in that, okay, I mean, he's had enough time now to analyze the group. And he has more time between now and March 8th. But if you're Pierre Dorion, maybe you're not having the same sort of consideration with Jake Chychrun because you were the guy invested and you were the guy that paid the price to acquire him from the Arizona Coyotes.
Dregs, whether it's Pierre Dorion or some other GM,
they
all, and I understand it, they get hamstrung by the moves that they make because
they do.
Once they make them, they're going to jam that peg in the hole, whether it fits or not, and they're going to keep. Oh no, but I think it's coming. It's happening.
Yeah.
Do you know who? I have long been amused by and admire for not being like that is Jim Rutherford.
Mm-hmm.
Just go back to his days in Pittsburgh. How many times did they make a move? It didn't work. They just traded the guy and they moved him along. He's like, well, it didn't work. And I think it's really hard to do that. I put myself, if I were a manager, because if I make a trade for Darren Dreger and it's not quite working, and I'm like, I've got to tell everybody I made a mistake, or I'm going to try and round the edges off here and hope that Dregs fits in this square peg round hole thing or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And it's got to be hard to do. So you're right. Sthls does have he has a freedom of a new owner that he has a long relationship with, a new job, and the open field of shaping a roster that clearly needs to be reshaped.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, we'll move off Ottawa here and we'll get on to the Boston Bruins, but it's starting to look a little bit more, and getting Pinto back was a real nice add for the Sens, but it looks like the players are starting to conform to the way Jacques is demanding they play, Alfie demanding they play with a little bit more defensive attention.
Well, as much as, look, I love goals, I think, as much as anybody, and it pains me to say that you just cannot win unless you have attention at the other end of the ice. You just can't. You can say, oh, but we can outscore our problems, or we defend pretty well. The last team that defended pretty well that was successful and won was nobody.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
All right. Boston Bruins. To me, I guess I shouldn't be as surprised as I continually am. I mean, their goaltending is top notch.
Yeah.
So maybe that's beginning, middle, and end of the level of success. Are we waiting for the Bruins, though, to flatten out even a little bit? Like 5 straight wins here, including an impressive one over Winnipeg, 4-1 last night. We know they've got good, young, competitive players. I think of DeBrusk, who's kind of come of late here. Yeah. Frederick is a nice add. Geeky is versatile. He can play all kinds of different slots for you. And then again, the goaltending. So do you expect they're going to flatten out here, or are they going to run away with the East? Because that's the way it looks right now.
Well, I often think, okay, I'd like to go back and listen to what I said a few months ago, because it's proven that I'm right. But I don't want to do that with the Bruins, because I said at the start of the year, there's going to be 30 points available that teams in the East are going to be able to collect, the Buffaloes and Detroits and Ottawas. And, oh yeah, Boston just kept them all. I don't get it. I don't get it. And I'm going to, even from just a couple of weeks ago, I'm going to pretend that I didn't say the coach of the year candidates and not include Jim Montgomery. And the reason I'm going to say that is last year, Montgomery wrote in that lineup on the first day of the year, and then he coached the team. And that was it. It never moved. The lines never changed. You had, DeBrusk was with Krejci, and Marchand was with Bergeron, and like that was it, right? They just went forward. This year, I've done maybe 4 or 5 Bruins game strikes. I was looking at my charts the other day because I got a game coming up, and I'm like,
I know where this is going.
None of them are the same. I've got Trent Frederick at center. I've got him at right wing. I've got him at left wing. I've got Geeky in the middle. I've got him at right wing. I've got him. Yeah. Charlie Coyle, like all of a sudden, how is Charlie Coyle a top line center? I don't know if he is, but he is there. And so I think Montgomery's done a masterful job of looking at his roster and going, what do I have right now? And remember, early in the year, it was Matt Poitras. And then he's taken a predictable step back. So now they move him to the wing. They play him on the 4th line. They move him over here. They move him over there. Oh, they move Geeky into the middle. They move Frederick's going to, I think we forget, Frederick was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
But it took 5 years.
Yeah.
But this is why, if I can just go on a little tangent, this is why you can't look at a young player and say they're all the same about their development. The Bruins could wait for Trent Frederick as much as they didn't want to, because they had Bergeron and Krejci. If they didn't have them, they couldn't have waited for him, and they might have had to trade him. And he might be doing this somewhere else. I think it's really instructive about teams as they're growing, like if you can insulate your young guys, it's the best. Sometimes you just can't. And those guys get moved before they should. But did you watch the game last night?
I did. Yeah, not all of it, but I watched a chunk. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. In the first half of the game, I'm like, I don't think either team is going to get to 10 shots. It was like playing in a mirror. Check, 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 check. I'm like, there's nowhere. It's like each team had 9. It was like one of those Timbits games in between periods where they got 12 guys on a side. There was nowhere to go. It was really, really impressive to watch how tight those teams can play.
I mean, at one point it covered my eyes because Potter ran into Adam Lowry. And it was like Lowry just somehow exploded. And I had to rewind to watch it. And it didn't look like Matt really caught him. Like he barely touched him. It was just one of those kind of weird sort of
Sometimes if you get a big boy off balance, it's like the Titanic going down. Because if he's got his feet planted, that collision's going to go a lot different.
Way different, yeah. All right, we're going to wrap up Tim Hortons headlines with this. And look, maybe we should have talked about it last week, but it seems to be gaining a bit of steam. And I know that junior hockey is still very much near and dear to your heart at all levels. So major news in junior A hockey, where 5 teams from the Alberta Junior Hockey League will jump to the BC Junior League next season. So you're talking about Black Falls, Brooks, Okotoks, Sherwood Park, and Spruce Grove joining the BC League, which no longer competes under the umbrella of Hockey Canada.
Right.
So when anybody who's listening in the U.S. doesn't understand why that matters, it matters because now this allows teams to recruit 16, 17-year-olds across the country. Under Hockey Canada's governance, as we know, teams can only recruit within their province. So no flexibility from Hockey Canada. So BC says, no problem. We're the best junior A league in the country. We're going to take our puck and go home. So they break away from Hockey Canada and now lure 5 Alberta junior teams into the group for next year. I like the concept of a super league appeals to me, but the grassroots part of it, isn't that what's going to happen, Alberta, Ray? Like those are 5 terrific, powerful teams in that AJHL loop. So I understand from a competitive aspect. As a parent, I would understand why I'd want my kid to play in that environment. But then from an old school hockey grassroots development perspective, oh no. So is this on Hockey Canada for not being more flexible? Or are you a little pissed off at, the BC League just kind of going on a power trip here?
Well, I have a little bit of insight into this. My son Landon, who is now home after retiring this year, he's coaching a little bit around the birth of his son with Langley in the BC Junior League. So I know this a little bit. My other son, Matt, is billeting one of the kids that plays in trail in the BC Junior League. So Hockey Canada in this discussion, it's almost like you're going to be the toughest guy in the cemetery. Like, who cares? Right? Like, so there's now a 17-team league, I believe is the number. It's bigger than that from BC and Alberta.
Yeah.
And you're left with what? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Their part of their posture was, go ahead. Have your own league. How are you going to get insurance? Well, the BC League went and got insurance. Like it's the same thing, but it's their own individual league. I'll tell you, Dregs, you struck the point though, and that's at the grassroots level. But I think people think of grassroots as being little kids. But let me give you an example. Because they're not part of Hockey Canada, those teams, the BCHL teams, cannot take a player, an affiliated player from Junior B and bring them up if they have injuries, for example. And so that's long been the way it's been done. You have local junior teams, Junior B teams, players get signed to a Junior A card, they're able to play. You have a certain number of cards and they're allowed to fill their rosters. So that might not seem like a big deal, except what do you do with a third goalie?
Mm-hmm.
Where does he play?
Yeah.
Well, he can't play anywhere.
Can't play midget.
Can't play midget. That's an affiliated league with Hockey Canada. So now you're getting into the point where the adults are fighting over something that's not of the benefit for the kids. And if you really care, then you need to start digging in about what can we do. You know what's going to happen is that the academies are going to gain traction here because the academies are not affiliated with Hockey Canada.
Yeah.
And so a league is formed and going to continue to grow because the junior A teams are going to need academies because those players are going to need to be part of the pipeline that goes to the best junior A league in the country. Yeah. And so what you got is a big frickin' mess. And it is now time, as much as they said, oh, we'll go ahead and do it. It's now time with the 5 teams from Alberta moving to the BC League. It's now time to go, okay, we got to dig in and figure out what's the best way forward because this isn't it.
I agree. Well, it's a story that we'll continue to monitor here. I know from a CHL perspective because those players also can't play major junior hockey.
Correct.
You know, CHL.
Oh, Dregs, we should clarify what that means is once you sign your card, which basically is your contract for the year, I believe it's September 1st, that eliminates you for the entire year.
Correct.
So a player that's playing in junior A in Trail or Salmon Arm or Surrey or wherever, and say Lethbridge says, hey, geez, we think you're a heck of a player. We'd like to bring you up here in November. They can't. If that player even wants to go, they can't.
Yeah.
So you can see where on many arms this crosses and the wires don't touch. And I think it's incumbent on Hockey Canada because they're the ones that are on the back foot here and say, okay, how can we make this amenable for the most kids? This has to be about, for both the BC League and Hockey Canada, what's the decision we can make that benefits the most players? Because anything else is the wrong way to look at it.
Couldn't agree more. And it's something that, you know, we'll continue to monitor here moving forward. Bit surprised it hasn't gained more attention in Canada. But anyway, it's something we'll continue to follow. Those are your Tim Hortons headlines.
Your favorite retro donuts are back from the past. And with our 20-minute fresh coffee, what's classic is always fresh.
So good.
It's time for retro donuts. It's time for Tim's.
It's time for Tim's.
Our interviews in Rand Dregs brought to us by Canadian Club Whiskey, who have introduced the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask, signature CC Classic 12-year-old whiskey, finished with a secondary aging in Oloroso Sherry casks. Let's take a couple of Ask Ray Dregs Anything questions. You can send us your questions on Twitter or socials, Instagram, RandDregs, or on the website, RandDregs.com. Okay, Chris has a question about officiating. Hey guys, love the pod. I have a question in regards to referees and how they call a game. I know they micromanage the blue line for offside down to the finest hair, but why is the red line dump-in so loosey-goosey for calls? Both enter the offensive zone, but many of the dump-ins from the red line are rarely by the book over the red line as it's supposed to be. Why the difference in entering the offensive zone, Ray, as far as how they call it? And the reason I go to this is I've noticed that, but I think it happens so frequently that I'm just like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, as long as the play continues, I don't care. Keep going.
You're 100% right. Here's the thing, though. Of the rules that have not changed over the last 20 years, I'll say, are when you do dump the puck in, if you're in motion and your follow through brings you to the red line, they let the play go. And the reason they do is there would be 137 faceoffs. And so so I think they believe, and they're right, there's no real scoring chance when you dump it in. Although lots of times it could lead to one.
Yeah.
And so I think they go, unless it's obvious, they go, nah, it's fine. And right or wrong, I think it's stoppages of play that you're trying not to get a handle on, or try to,
Right.
they're trying to get a handle on. They don't want so many that there's, literally 70 face-offs a night. Like,
Right. That
enough.
makes sense. Okay, Alan. Hey, Ray and Dregs. I've been listening, watching your show since the start, and I
Thank
love
you.
it. You guys make a fabulous team. Your interactions and banter with each other and your guests are what the show is all about. So great. My question related to your podcast, you've had a lot of great guests over the season. So if one of you had to go on LTIR and the other had to choose someone else to fill in for an extended period, who would be in your top three? And ultimately, who would you get to fill in the big shoes of your podcast mate? Would it be someone you've had on the show before? A call-up that you've never had before? I mean, Alan is digging into our business.
That's pretty good here. That's pretty good. The guys that I'm thinking of right away, they already have jobs, and they're probably not going to leave them due to the pay cut.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe this is a little bit of recency bias, but Nick Foligno would be phenomenal.
Yes, he would. Yeah.
By the way, as the Kelsey brothers have their podcast, and they do, and it's hilarious. And
it's hilarious.
And by the way, if Jason Kelsey could have been funnier on the weekend,
yeah,
with no shirt on in Buffalo, pounding beers, and his wife in the back just laughing at him, like I thought that was. But anyway, I was going to say the Foligno brothers should have their own podcast because there are a couple of knuckleheads that make me laugh all the time. But Nick Foligno, recency bias would be one. Steve Thomas would be another because he's a great storyteller. Glenn Healy would be another. And I would always have, if you want to talk sports and have somebody laugh, Andrew Brunette should be on your list. One of the great characters around. So that's kind of the great guests we've had. That would be some of them for sure. How about you?
I get it.
Who
Same. I mean, I might throw Chris Pronger into that mix.
Oh, yeah.
Again, just a character. He's got so much going on though, and your point was well made. None of these guys are taking the pay cut, so probably not happening anytime soon. Jake Middleton was a really
he
good
was
guest.
Great. And you'd never have to, the only thing you'd have to worry about is what if he decided he was packing that day and he was throwing all his clothes in a garbage bag to walk to the next place. Remember when he got traded? He couldn't come on right away because he had to go buy a suitcase because he never owned one.
He had like 5 T-shirts.
That's the best. I love that.
I might throw the O-Dog into the mix, but hey, a motivated O-Dog, and you got something there. You can work with a motivated O-Dog. Beyond that, I mean, James Duthie kind of does everything. If we're looking more of my role, like, kind of the host, quasi-host, Duthie's well-versed, man. Like he's in Turks and Caicos right now.
Yeah, he's busy. He's in Turks and resetting from what?
Yeah.
Think about it.
It's been a grind for him. Now, and he's got the Super Bowl right around the corner.
Is he playing?
No, he's not playing.
Okay, just check. Because, he was quite a flag football player in his day till he got injured and limped onto the set. He
does have some bizarre stories when it comes to some of his
we should get him on
physical breakdowns. Yeah, we got to get him.
You know what? We should get him soon because his 49ers, they're sitting there in the championship game and, he's excited.
Maybe we'll get him like from the field or something at Super Bowl. See how that works. Like just a real quick man on the scene type of thing. Kermit the Frog here. Remember?
Most of our listeners are too young for that. Go look at Kermit. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He always had the trench coat on and he was like,
yeah. Reporting live, Kermit the Frog. All right, final question. Ask Ray Dregs Anything. And this is a softball, but I like it from Matthew. How did Ollie and Tiny's names come to be?
You know what? I don't know where Ollie came from.
Ooh. The boys didn't contribute. They must have waited.
Okay, so Riley was old. Riley was older. He was 14. I don't think he noticed till the dog showed up here. You know,
Yeah.
you know, that 14, 15-year-old.
Yeah,
Reese
yeah.
was right in. Reese was right into it, right?
Okay.
I don't know. Cammy was leaning. I forget. Oh, she wanted Charlie. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No, I don't know why. It just, I don't want Charlie.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so I don't know where Ollie came from, but it's like your kids.
I like it.
But it's like your kids, right? Like I'm sure
Yeah.
when you had Katie and Mason, you had other names you were kind of kicking around. And if you think of them now, you're like, nah, that wouldn't fit.
It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
all
I
these
get it.
perfect. Tiny, what did you think? Like, what's the furthest away from what this dog's going to be, or what?
I guess. You know what? I don't even have a cool story. She was a rescue dog, right?
Right.
I don't know if this organization is still operating, but it was a company called Great Danes Angels. And look, I mean, when you acquire a Great Dane as a puppy, unless you've had them before, you obviously have no idea what you're getting. I mean, some of these behemoths can grow up to 200 pounds or bigger than that, right? So that's why Great Dane Angels exist. So people, unfortunately, can't handle the expense of feeding and taking these big dogs to the vet, so they turn them back. So we got Tiny from Great Dane Angels from a family in Quebec, and her name was Tiny. We just thought, why would we confuse it? She was like 2.5 at the time.
How long have you had Tiny?
She's 9 now, so 6.5 years. Yeah.
How much food do you think that dog is eating? Like,
I'll tell you, it's, you know, again, I'm sure you feed Ollie quality food.
I gotta
Okay, maybe not.
No, don't lose your train of thought. So, Ollie's been having trouble with the dog food. So we've been making, like, we have, like, you know, like some ground turkey, and you put some carrots and peas in it, right? And so we had this thing in the fridge. And so Cammie goes to feed him last night, and she goes, "Did you throw out all the turkey and all these food?" I go, "Oh, I ate it." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "It was like turkey and ground peas and carrots and stuff, right?" She's like, "That's the dog's food." I go, "Oh, it was delicious. I had it for lunch today."
Come on.
So
when was the turkey from?
I don't know. I feel great.
You ate dog food, man.
No, I ate it. It's ground turkey.
Yeah.
It didn't come out of the dog factory. And so last night she's like, we're getting ready to go to the Canucks game, and she's like, "Where's all these food?" I go, "I don't know." And she's like, "The ground turkey, and it had carrots and stuff in it." And I was like, "Oh, actually, I had that for lunch today. It was really good. No wonder Ollie likes it. It was fantastic." So, oops.
Oh, that's outstanding.
Sorry about that. That's just happened yesterday.
I'm kind of embarrassed to answer, because I don't want this to sound like the haves versus the have-nots, but I'm a firm believer if you have a pet, doesn't matter what it is, you have to take proper care of the animal. That's your responsibility and your obligation. So in Tiny's case, I mean, she eats a lot of food, and it's probably in the vicinity of $300-400 a month.
Come on.
Yeah. You know, it's special brands and things like that.
Yeah,
and then there's other accompaniments and things like that. Yeah, she puts away the groceries. I'm not gonna lie.
Don't worry, it'll get better when Mason comes back.
Yeah, oh yeah, that'll change everything.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for that, Matthew, Alan, Chris. All good stuff on Ask Ray Dregs Anything. All right, buddy, what's the travel week look like?
I'm
now.
I got the Blues, St. Louis and Vancouver tomorrow night at home. And Thursday, fly to New York, Vegas, and the Rangers.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. And then fly home Saturday to make sure the kids are all organized and things. And then Sunday afternoon, I'm going on a golf trip for 5 days. And then I'll end up at the All-Star game the following weekend. But
nice.
Oh boy, the clubs they're in my office. They're polished up and ready to go. I swinging a couple of wedges yesterday out in the backyard, you know, kind of in the rain and stuff. I'm like, that's all right. I can swing.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So it was kind of nice.
I'm
ready to go.
Good for you.
about
yeah, we're in that weird stretch, which is, always thankful for this, where we have regional games, but we don't have anything Toronto Maple Leaf based. So insider trading's doing what I do on the insider beat. But other than that, just we're actually heading, Holly and I are going to the Cabbage on February 1st, but we're stopping in Thunder Bay. Katie Dreger is the lead in a theater production that's going on right now.
Good for her.
In Thunder Bay. Yeah, I mean, she's doing interviews with local media and whatnot. I don't like sharing the spotlight. I don't.
She's going to have you kicked to the curb in no time.
I hope so.
Yeah, good point.
That'd be a good reprieve for me.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, look forward to the golf trip. Obviously, we'll reconnect on Thursday. By all accounts, I mean, things can change suddenly depending on what happens. But Rick Bowness, head coach of the Winnipeg Jets, is likely joining us on Thursday, and then we'll drop the episode on Friday morning.
Awesome. Look forward to talking to Bones. He's always, if you want energy, always.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good couple of days. We'll talk to you on Thursday or Friday.
Yes, and thank you to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Dregs, our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, and Tim Hortons. And thank you to you for rating, for listening, and for sharing the podcast and joining us on our YouTube channel as well. Until next time, stay safe, everybody.